While visiting my neighbor, he opened the door shirtless. Behind him, my fiancé's voice called out. My name is Andrew. I'm 29 years old, and up until that morning I thought I had my life figured out. I had a decent job at an accounting firm, a small but comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and a fiancée, Clara, who I believed was my future. We had been engaged for 6 months, living together for a year, and despite the usual arguments couples have, I thought we were steady. The wedding was supposed to be in less than a year, and most of my energy had been going into paying off deposits, planning, and making sure everything stayed on track. It was a Saturday morning when I first felt something snap. I'd been fixing a leak in the kitchen sink, wrestling with a wrench that refused to budge. Water had been dripping for days, and I decided I'd had enough. Only problem was, I didn't own the right kind of ladder to reach the main valve in the tiny storage hatch above our hallway. My neighbor across the hall, Dylan, had moved in about 6 months earlier. He was a tall, broad-shouldered guy in his early 30s, the type who always looked like he just walked out of a gym. We had exchanged small talk a few times, and I'd seen him carrying power tools in and out, so I figured he might have a ladder I could borrow. I didn't expect much from the knock. Just a polite request, maybe some neighborly goodwill. Instead, the door swung open, and there he was, shirtless, sweating lightly as if he'd just finished a workout or something more intimate. Before I could get a word out, I heard it. A voice. Not just any voice. Claire's voice. It came from inside his apartment, muffled but unmistakable. A laugh that I knew too well. The exact sound she made when she tried to brush off something awkward. I froze, my mouth hanging open. My brain scrambled for excuses, explanations, anything. But Dylan just leaned against the doorframe, smirking like he had been expecting this moment all along. I didn't ask. I didn't wait. My body moved before my mind did. I shoved past him, hard enough that his shoulder banged against the wall. Andrew, what the hell? He barked, but I was already inside. The smell hit me first. Perfume. Clara's perfume. Sweet and floral, lingering in the air like it had been sprayed moments ago. And then I saw her. She was in the living room, standing there in one of Dylan's oversized shirts, her hair pulled up in a messy knot, barefoot. She froze like a deer in headlights. Her phone was on the coffee table, next to 2 half-empty wine glasses. The room felt like it shrank. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. Clara's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She couldn't find words. I spoke first, my voice colder than I expected. What are you doing here? She stammered something about helping Dylan with some paperwork, but the sight in front of me mocked her words. Paperwork didn't require wearing another man's clothes, didn't involve 2 glasses of wine before noon, didn't explain why Dylan was shirtless at the door. Dylan stepped closer, arms crossed, trying to take control of the room. Relax, man. You're overreacting. I turned on him so fast he actually flinched. Shut up. You don't get to talk. For a second, I thought I was going to hit him. My fists clenched on their own, and I felt that dangerous heat crawling up my neck. But I didn't. Instead, I looked back at Clara, waiting, begging internally for her to say something that made sense. She finally found her voice. Andrew, it's not what you think. Please, just let me explain. Then explain. I cut her off. Her eyes darted to Dylan, who was still smirking. That was enough of an answer for me. I stepped forward, grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly enough that she had to look at me. You're lying. Right here. In his apartment. In his shirt. You think I'm blind. She yanked her arm away and suddenly turned defensive, her voice rising. You're being paranoid again. You always twist things in your head until you convince yourself of some conspiracy. You don't trust me. That's the problem here, Andrew. That line stung more than anything. She wasn't denying it. She was turning it on me, making me the unstable one. And Dylan, standing there with that smug look, fed on it, like he enjoyed watching the implosion. I couldn't stand another second in that room. If I stayed, I'd either break something or hit someone, and neither would help me. So I stepped back, shaking with adrenaline, and pointed at Clara. Go home. Now. We're talking about this when I get back. She hesitated but finally obeyed, slipping past me and into the hallway. Dylan called after her with a low laugh, and that sound almost drove me back inside to shut him up permanently. Instead, I slammed his door hard enough that the frame rattled. Clara didn't say a word on the walk back to our apartment. She kept her arms folded, staring at the ground, lips pressed into a thin line. I couldn't even look at her. When we stepped inside, she finally broke the silence. Andrew, you can't just barge into someone's place like that. Do you realize how insane you looked? My laugh was hollow. Insane? I walked in and found my fiancé half-dressed in the neighbor's apartment. And you think I'm the crazy one? She fired back quickly, almost too quickly. I told you. I was helping him with some documents. I spilled coffee on my blouse, so I borrowed his shirt while mine dried. That's all it was. The story was flimsy, stitched together in panic. But what struck me wasn't just the lie. It was how easily she said it, how practiced it sounded, as if she had been preparing for this moment. I didn't argue further. I didn't scream. I just stared at her until she grew uncomfortable and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door. For hours I sat on the couch, replaying the scene in my head. Every detail cut into me. The perfume, the wine glasses, the shirt, the look on Dylan's face when I burst in. And Clara's reaction, not guilt, not even denial, but accusation. She wanted me to doubt my own eyes. It might have worked if I hadn't noticed one last thing before leaving Dylan's apartment. His phone had been on the arm of the couch, face up. A message had lit up the screen. A woman's name. Mia. The text preview was short but clear. Call me back. Where are you? Dylan wasn't just tangled up with Clara. He was tangled up with someone else, too. And in that moment, my anger shifted. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a game, and I had walked into the middle of it blind. By evening, Clara emerged from the bedroom, pretending nothing had happened, asking if I wanted to order dinner. She acted as if the morning had been some minor spat, not a bomb dropped on our relationship. I played along, nodding, saying little, watching her carefully. Because while she thought she had planted doubt in me, the truth was the opposite. I wasn't doubting myself. I was doubting her, and now, I was determined to uncover what was really going on. And Dylan, that smug bastard. He thought I'd just walk away shaken, too insecure to press further. He didn't know me at all. If Clara was lying to my face and Dylan was playing games with more than one woman, then I wasn't going to sit back and wait for answers. That night, while Clara slept, I wrote down everything I had seen, every inconsistency in her story, every little detail I remembered. And at the top of the page, underlined twice, was one name. Mia. The person Dylan hadn't expected me to notice. The person who might be the key to unraveling all of this. The morning after the confrontation at Dylan's door, I woke with a knot in my stomach. Clara was already up, moving around the kitchen like nothing had happened. She wore her hair down, humming to herself as she poured coffee into 2 mugs, sliding one toward me like she always did. Routine. Familiar. Almost comforting, if I hadn't seen her in Dylan's shirt less than 24 hours earlier. I stared at her for a long moment. She was trying hard to look calm, collected, normal. Too hard. That's when I knew for sure. She wasn't planning to come clean. Whatever happened in Dylan's apartment, she was going to bury it, and if I wanted the truth, I'd have to dig it out myself. I didn't touch the coffee. We need to talk, I said. She didn't meet my eyes. Andrew, please. I told you yesterday. It was nothing. Dylan needed help with documents. I spilled coffee. He offered me a shirt. That's all. She forced a laugh. You came in at the worst possible moment and made it look bad. The way she said it, calm, rehearsed, made my skin crawl. If I hadn't been there myself, maybe I'd have believed her. But the perfume, the wine glasses, Dylan's smirk, they were burned into my memory. She wasn't just lying. She was building a story she could hide behind. I didn't argue. Arguing would give her ground to stand on. Instead, I nodded, let her think she had convinced me. Inside, I was already mapping my next move. For the next few days, I watched her closely. She still left in the evenings for late shifts, still came home with vague explanations about errands or helping a friend. At first, I tried to catch her in small contradictions, but Clara was sharper than I gave her credit for. Every time I pressed, she had an excuse ready. She was careful, too careful, but Dylan wasn't. I began to notice his patterns. His car, a black SUV, was usually gone in the afternoons but parked by evening. Except on nights when Clara claimed to be working late. Then the SUV wouldn't move at all. It sat there, smug and silent, like a witness I couldn't question. I needed more than suspicions. I needed evidence. So, one night, I followed her. She said she was heading to the office to finish a report. I waited 5 minutes after she left, then slipped out and trailed her car at a distance. She drove straight past her office exit on the highway, never even slowing down. My chest tightened as I realized where she was going. Sure enough, she turned into our apartment complex's neighboring lot and parked. I killed my headlights, hung back. She walked confidently, not even glancing over her shoulder, and went straight to Dylan's door. She knocked once, lightly. He opened it, shirtless again, and pulled her inside without hesitation. It wasn't paperwork. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, rehearsed, routine. I sat there in the dark for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. My first impulse was to storm in again, to drag her out and end it once and for all. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe the nagging thought that if I made the same mistake twice, walking in without proof, they'd twist it against me again. So I waited, watched, took photos on my phone as she entered, as the light in Dylan's window flicked on, as shadows moved across the blinds. And then something unexpected happened. Another car pulled into the lot. A small sedan, unfamiliar. A woman got out. She was dressed casually but neat, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, carrying a tote bag. She walked up to Dylan's apartment like she belonged there. She knocked. For a moment, no one answered. Then Dylan appeared, fully clothed this time, and let her in. I zoomed in with my phone. The door closed, but not before I caught a glimpse of her face. Young, maybe mid-20s, with sharp features and an expression that was anything but suspicious. She wasn't sneaking. She wasn't nervous. She looked like someone visiting her boyfriend. My chest tightened again. Clara was inside. Dylan was juggling two women under the same roof, one of them my fiancée. I snapped more photos, documenting every detail. Date, time, car plates. My anger dulled into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation, and Dylan was at the center of it. The next morning, Clara acted normal again. She made pancakes, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted to go grocery shopping later. I played along, nodded at the right times, even smiled. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying the scene in the parking lot. Dylan opening the door to two different women in the same night. I needed to know who the other woman was. That evening, while Clara showered, I slipped her phone from the nightstand. I wasn't proud of it, but pride didn't matter anymore. I scrolled through her messages, looking for Dylan's name. Nothing. He wasn't saved in her contacts, which told me she was careful. But I found threads of work stuff, vague, short replies like "on my way" or "got delayed, don't wait up." Clean, but too clean. I set the phone back before she noticed. Later, I lingered in the hall, pretending to take out trash. Dylan's door was slightly ajar, music spilling out. And then I saw her, the other woman. She stepped out, laughing at something Dylan said behind her. She pulled the tote bag onto her shoulder, keys jingling in her hand. Her eyes met mine briefly. She smiled politely. "Hey." I nodded back, keeping my expression neutral. Inside, my mind raced. This had to be Mia. The opportunity came 2 days later. Clara claimed she had to stay late at work again. I knew what that meant. I waited until she left, then crossed the hall and knocked on Dylan's door. My heart pounded, not knowing if he or Clara would answer. But it wasn't either of them. It was her. Mia. She opened the door halfway, looking surprised. "Oh, hi. You're Andrew, right?" From across the hall. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Sorry to bother you. Is Dylan around?" She frowned. "He ran out a minute ago. Should be back soon. Do you need something?" Her tone was warm, casual. She didn't know. That realization hit me like a jolt. She had no idea Clara existed. I forced a smile. "No, it's fine. Just thought I'd ask about borrowing a tool." We exchanged a few polite words before she closed the door. But in that short exchange, I confirmed what I already suspected. She wasn't just some casual fling. She thought she was his girlfriend. I stood in the hallway, pulse hammering, and felt the pieces shift into place. Dylan was stringing both of them along. Clara, my fiancée, and Mia, the woman across the hall who thought she was in a relationship. He was using both, and I was the idiot caught in the middle. I couldn't confront Clara yet, not without strategy. She would twist it again, turn it back on me. I couldn't confront Dylan either, not without risking another explosion. The only way forward was through Mia. The next time I saw her, I made a point of being friendly. Casual hellos in the hallway, small talk about the building, the weather, neighbors. Slowly, carefully, I built a bridge. She didn't suspect a thing. Why would she? To her, I was just the guy across the hall, making neighborly conversation. But underneath, I was watching her closely, piecing together her schedule. When she came and went. How often she stayed at Dylan's. When Dylan was with her, and when he wasn't. Patterns emerged quickly. One night, she mentioned offhand that Dylan had been acting distracted lately, taking more phone calls than usual, leaving without explanation. She laughed it off, but I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. That was my opening. I leaned against the hallway wall, lowering my voice. "Mia, can I ask you something? Do you ever feel like Dylan's hiding something?" Her expression changed immediately. Guarded. Curious. "Why would you say that?" I hesitated, letting the tension build. "Because I've seen things. Things that don't add up." She didn't press for details then, but the seed was planted. She went quiet, nodded slowly, and excused herself. That night, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had leverage. Clara thought she was clever. Dylan thought he was untouchable, but neither of them realized the person who could unravel everything was living right across the hall. 2 days later, Mia knocked on my door. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held out her phone. "Andrew, can we talk?" On the screen was a message from Dylan, asking her to meet him later. Except the timestamp matched the exact night I'd followed Clara into his apartment. The walls around Dylan were cracking, and Mia was beginning to see it. And I knew then, this wasn't just about catching Clara anymore. This was about exposing Dylan, tearing his game apart piece by piece. The difference was, I wasn't doing it alone anymore. When Mia stepped into my apartment that evening, clutching her phone like it was burning her hand, I knew there was no going back. Her face said everything. The doubt that had been gnawing at her had finally broken through the surface. Dylan's mask was slipping, and she was beginning to see the man underneath. We sat at my kitchen table, both of us tense. She slid her phone toward me. The screen lit up with a string of messages from Dylan. He'd told her he was working late, then slipped and invited her over an hour later. The problem was, I had seen Clara go into his apartment that same night. I pushed her phone back. "You weren't the only one he had over that night," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been holding back. My fiancée was there. Mia's mouth fell open, her fingers tightening around her phone. "You're joking." "I wish I was. Clara and I have been together for years. Engaged. I walked in on her at Dylan's apartment last week. She was wearing his shirt. Since then, I followed her twice. Both times, she went straight to him." Mia looked like she'd been punched in the stomach. She pushed her chair back and paced, muttering under her breath. "Unbelievable. I thought maybe he was distant because of stress or money. But this..." She stopped, looking at me sharply. "And she knows about me?" "No," I said. "At least, I don't think so. She thinks she's the only one." Mia shook her head, her expression hardening. "Then they deserve each other. But he's not just lying to us. He's using us." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She sat again, lowering her voice. "He's been pressuring me to co-sign a loan. Some business idea he claims will take off. At first it sounded harmless, but then I realized he was hiding details. Every time I asked questions, he brushed me off or changed the subject. I felt my stomach drop. Clara's been pulling money from our joint account. Small amounts, but consistent. I thought she was buying things for the wedding. Now I'm not so sure." We sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down. It wasn't just cheating. Dylan was running a con, playing both sides. Clara thought she was upgrading to some kind of exciting new partner. Mia thought she was supporting a boyfriend's ambitions. In reality, Dylan was squeezing both of them dry. And if we didn't stop him, he'd keep doing it until we had nothing left. Over the next week, Mia and I built our case. She sent me screenshots of texts where Dylan hinted at money troubles, promises of payback, half-baked business plans. I showed her the suspicious withdrawals from my account, the nights Clara lied about working late. Piece by piece, we constructed a timeline that showed how Dylan juggled both women, covering his tracks by feeding us carefully measured lies. The more we uncovered, the colder I became. Clara hadn't stumbled into this. She had chosen it. She was complicit. She let Dylan convince her to steal from me, all while sleeping in my bed and pretending our life together meant something. Mia's anger burned hotter. She had believed in him, defended him to her friends, even introduced him to her family. Now she realized he'd been using her name, her credit, her trust as tools in his scheme. By the end of the week, we weren't just victims. We were partners. And we wanted blood. We decided the only way forward was to expose them together. Not in whispers, not in speculation, but with undeniable proof. Dylan thrived on denial, on turning the story around until we doubted ourselves. Clara had done the same. If we confronted them separately, they'd just twist it, make us question what we saw. But if we cornered them, caught them off guard, forced their lies into the light, they'd have no escape. I had cameras, small ones, left over from an old security system I never fully installed. I set them up in my apartment, one facing the couch, one covering the kitchen, another angled at the hallway. All discreet, all motion activated. The plan was simple. Invite Dylan over under the pretense of clearing the air. Meanwhile, Mia would lure Clara over with some story about wanting advice or needing to talk privately. Neither of them would suspect we were working together. And when they both walked into the same room, the truth would unravel. The night of the trap, my hands shook as I prepared. I checked the cameras twice, tested the audio. Mia arrived early, her jaw set, her phone already recording as a backup. She wore no makeup, no attempt to soften her expression. She wanted Dylan to see her fury. When Dylan arrived, he strolled in like he owned the place. He clapped me on the shoulder, grinning, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened. "Hey man, about the other day, things got out of hand. No hard feelings, right?" I forced a smile. "None at all. Grab a seat." He flopped onto the couch, sprawling comfortably. "See? We're adults. We can work this out." Clara probably already explained everything. I didn't answer. I just poured him a drink, watching the clock. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Dylan looked up, puzzled. "Expecting someone?" I shrugged. "Maybe." I opened the door, and Clara walked in. She froze when she saw Dylan on the couch. "Andrew? What's going on?" Before I could answer, Mia stepped out from the kitchen. Her face was pale, but steady. "What's going on?" she said coldly. "Is that we're all going to tell the truth?" The silence that followed was deafening. Dylan's smirk wavered for the first time. Clara's eyes darted between us, her breathing quickening. I shut the door and leaned against it, blocking the exit. No more lies. Not tonight. The confrontation exploded almost immediately. Clara turned on me first. You set me up? You've been spying on me, haven't you? This is insane, Andrew. Mia stepped forward, voice trembling with rage. Spying? He walked in on you in Dylan's shirt. You think that's a misunderstanding? What about the nights you've been here when Dylan was telling me he was working late? Clara's face flushed red. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, Mia snapped. You're as bad as he is. Dylan finally stood, raising his hands like he was the victim. Okay, enough. This is ridiculous. You're both overreacting. Clara and I. Look, we have a connection. Andrew, you were never good enough for her. And Mia, you're sweet, but you were never going to keep up with me. The words dripped with arrogance. I felt my fists clench, but I forced myself to stay still. Let him hang himself. He wasn't done. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and waved it like a trophy. You think you've caught me? I've been playing you both for months. Clara's been helping me. We've got plans. Real plans. Not this 9-to-5 crap Andrew hides behind. And Mia? You were supposed to bankroll it. Mia's face went pale. You used me. He laughed. Of course I did. That's what you were good for. And Clara understood that from the start. I turned to Clara, my chest tight. Is that true? Her silence was the loudest answer I'd ever heard. Finally, she whispered. He promised me something better. It was like a knife twisting in my chest. Not just the betrayal, but the contempt. The woman I thought I'd spend my life with had stolen from me, lied to me, and handed my future to a con artist because he sold her a dream. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. You're both finished. Dylan chuckled, shaking his head. Finished? You've got nothing. No proof, no leverage. You're just angry. By tomorrow, you'll both calm down, and I'll still be standing. That's when Mia pulled out her phone and hit play. Dylan's voice filled the room, recorded from just minutes earlier. Of course I did. That's what you were good for. And Clara understood that from the start. His smirk vanished. I pointed toward the camera in the corner, its red light blinking faintly. You're done, Dylan. Every word you just said is on record. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Clara sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Mia stared at Dylan with pure hatred, her phone still recording, her thumb hovering over the screen like a trigger. The room after Dylan's outburst felt like a battlefield. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint buzz from the camera's indicator light, recording every second. Clara sat frozen, her head in her hands. Dylan stood by the couch, chest heaving, eyes darting between me and Mia, as if calculating whether he could still talk his way out. I was the first to move. I crossed the room, pulled the memory card from the hidden camera, and slipped it into my pocket. Dylan shifted like he wanted to protest, but for once, he said nothing. His confidence had cracked, and with it, his grip on the room. Mia straightened, her hands steady now, her anger sharpened into focus. I'm done, she said flatly. I'll be sending all of this to my bank tomorrow. You won't see another dollar from me. Clara looked up at her, face blotchy with panic. Wait, don't do this. You don't know what you're talking about. Dylan he just got carried away. Mia's laugh was short and bitter. Carried away? He admitted it, Clara. He admitted you were both stealing from Andrew and using me as a piggy bank. How much more proof do you need? Clara's lips trembled. She looked at me then, desperation in her eyes. Andrew, please. You can't believe. I cut her off with a raised hand. Stop. You made your choice the moment you walked into his apartment. The moment you took money from our account. Don't stand there and pretend you didn't know what you were doing. Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. Dylan finally found his voice, but it wasn't smooth or confident this time. It was defensive. You think anyone's going to care about your little recordings? So I vented, so I exaggerated. Who's going to prove fraud from that? You can't touch me. I leaned in close, lowering my voice so he had to strain to hear. You're right. I can't. But the bank can. And the police. And when they see the withdrawals, the transfers, the names on those documents you pushed, you won't be able to laugh your way out. For the first time since I'd met him, Dylan had no smirk. He backed away slightly, his jaw tight, his eyes calculating. Mia's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and gave a thin smile. That's my lawyer. I sent her the files before I came here. That was when Dylan lost it. He lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from her hand, but I was faster. I stepped between them, shoving him back hard into the couch. His breath whooshed out as he hit the cushions, stunned. Mia didn't flinch. She pocketed her phone calmly, her voice steady. Game over. The next 48 hours were chaos. I spent the night locking down everything I could. I called my bank, froze the joint account Clara and I shared, and explained the unauthorized withdrawals. They flagged the account for investigation. I contacted my credit card company and checked for anything unusual. Thankfully, Clara hadn't gotten that far. The following morning, I packed her things. Every piece of clothing, every trinket, every reminder of her. I didn't scream, didn't beg. I just piled her life into boxes and left them by the door. When she woke and saw what I'd done, she broke down. Tears, excuses, promises. She clutched at my arm, saying Dylan had manipulated her, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. But I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. Get out, I told her, voice flat. Don't come back. She left in tears, but I felt nothing watching her go. Meanwhile, Mia moved fast. She handed over the recordings, texts, and screenshots to her lawyer. Within days, Dylan's scam unraveled. The business loan he had been pushing turned out to be a cover for siphoning money through false applications. He had been using Mia's credit score as leverage while funneling Clara's stolen cash to keep his plan afloat. When the bank realized both women had been targeted, they escalated it. Fraud investigation. Police involvement. Dylan's name went from smug neighbor to person of interest overnight. I watched it all unfold quietly. I didn't need revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't need to humiliate him or Clara in public. The truth was enough, and the truth was already eating them alive. The arrest came on a Thursday afternoon. I heard the commotion in the hallway before I saw it. Voices, heavy boots, the crackle of radios. I stepped outside in time to see Dylan handcuffed, his face twisted with anger as two officers led him down the stairs. Neighbors peeked out from doorways, whispering, watching. Mia stood at the far end of the hall, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. Clara wasn't there. I later learned she had tried to call Dylan that morning, begging him to fix things before the police came. Instead, her parents showed up at my door that evening. They looked ashamed, their voices low. They hadn't known about the money, about the lies. They tried to apologize on her behalf, but I stopped them. You don't owe me anything, I said. Clara made her choices. Now she has to live with them. They nodded, their faces heavy with disappointment. For their daughter. For themselves. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread. Clara lost her job after her employer discovered she had been sneaking money from our joint account to funnel into Dylan's schemes. They cited integrity concerns and let her go. Her reputation crumbled. Friends distanced themselves. Whispers followed her everywhere. Dylan, meanwhile, faced a mountain of charges. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Mia's lawyer was relentless, pushing for every cent back. The recordings we captured became evidence. He wasn't laughing anymore. As for me, I focused on rebuilding. Closing accounts, securing my finances, reclaiming the pieces of my life Clara had tried to hand away. It was exhausting, but it was also freeing. Every form I filled, every call I made, was another step out of the mess they had dragged me into. One night, about a month after Dylan's arrest, Clara showed up at my door. She looked nothing like the woman I'd once planned to marry. Her clothes were wrinkled, her face pale, eyes red from crying. She clutched a small bag, her hands trembling. "Andrew," she whispered, "please. I don't have anywhere else to go." I stared at her, remembering the woman who had laughed in Dylan's apartment, who had chosen him over me because he promised her something better. I remembered the withdrawals from my account, the lies she spun, the contempt in her voice when she blamed me for being paranoid. I shook my head slowly. "No, you had somewhere to go. You chose it. Now live with it." I closed the door before she could answer. Her muffled sobs lingered for a moment, then faded down the hall. Months later, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. Dylan's apartment sat empty. The locks changed, the blinds shut tight. The whispers had died down, replaced by new tenants, new routines. Clara disappeared from my life completely, her number blocked, her name nothing more than a bitter memory. Mia moved out too, but not before we shared a final conversation. She thanked me for standing with her, for helping expose Dylan when she might have kept doubting herself. I thanked her for giving me the clarity to see Clara for who she really was. We weren't friends, not really, just survivors of the same storm. But that was enough. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to the moment that started it all. A simple knock on a neighbor's door, a voice I recognized when I wasn't supposed to. If I hadn't gone looking for a ladder that morning, I might still be living in ignorance, pouring money into an account my fiancée was draining, trusting a woman who had already chosen someone else. But I did knock. I did hear her voice. And I did walk through that door. It ruined everything. And it saved me.